Udacity and edX. Open Learning was chosen via tender by the Australian government as the first government MOOC delivering an online course to all states and federal public servants. And a Malaysian Ministry of Higher Education has selected Open Learning as the national MOOC platform for all 20 public universities. We would like to highlight again that Open Learning is our platinum sponsor for the event. Now please welcome Mr. Adam Brimo for his keynote entitled Creating the Next Generation of E-Learning. Welcome, sir.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi. How are you today? Good. Well, thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of IUCEL2016, and we're really honored to sponsor the event, and we really appreciate the support of the organizers and everyone else who's been involved. And I think my team and my company has had a wonderful time here, and I hope you've had a chance to visit our booth and do some of the fun activities that we have that demonstrate online learning and open learning in particular. So I just wanted to thank you all for that. Now, when I started preparing this talk, I was thinking about what it means and what motivates people to want to learn something. And I think that really goes to the core of what we're trying to do. And when I thought about that, I kind of looked back in my own life. And one of the things that I thought about was when I was younger, there were many different things that I wanted to do. Everyone has something in mind that they want to be, or that they want to achieve, whether it's a job or a life goal or meeting someone. So I guess although it's everyone's quite far away from me here, I did want to ask you briefly, or even at least think about what you wanted to be when you were younger. And for those of you who are still at university or in school, or even not, I mean, it's never too late to actually change what you do. So just think for a moment, what you wanted to be when you grew up, or if you're already grown up in a sense, what you want to do now. So does anyone have any thoughts, when they were a child? I can share mine to start. So when I was younger, I used to look at many different people in the world, and I used to think, wow, these people are quite amazing. And I used to watch the space program, so when they used to launch astronauts into space, and I would say, wow, I wonder if I could be an astronaut. And I looked into it, and you have to be a scientist, and you have to be very fit and strong, and you have to be very tough, and you have to have a very good understanding of many areas. So I thought, okay, I'm not sure if that's for me, but for a couple of years there, I was really inspired by it. And that inspiration actually drove me to learn more about science and technology. And at one point in time, I actually got to go to a museum where they had a simulator of the space shuttle. And I got to sit in the control area and actually see what it was like to be an astronaut, trying to navigate this space shuttle. So does anyone have anything that they were thinking about when they were younger that they want to call out? What you wanted to be, or things that really inspired you or motivated you? No? She wants to be president? A singer? Well, these are all, I mean, it's actually quite interesting because when you are younger, anything seems possible, right? Like when you're young, you think, wow, I could be a president, or I could be a famous singer, or I could be an astronaut. And when you get older, you sometimes think these things aren't possible because for some reason, when you get older, you actually think, okay, well, maybe there are only 20 astronauts really in the world, or maybe there's only going to be 5 presidents in my lifetime, so I can't be one of them. But first thing I would say is never give up hope. There's always a chance that you can do these things. But the other is that this ability to hope and dream of what you want to do is actually incredibly motivational for students. And every student at every level of education has a goal or something that they want to achieve. And that might be something, it could be being an astronaut or being president or being a singer, but it could also be something simple or something more achievable in some ways, like being a scientist or an engineer, or being an inventor, or being a designer. There are many different things that there are many different reasons why we go into something, and tapping into those when you're designing a learning experience is what makes it really special. Because at the end of the day, no matter what level of education you're at, in many areas, students have made a choice, or they have something in their mind that they're thinking about. Whether they're in school and they're thinking about the bigger goal, or whether they're in university and they're thinking about becoming an engineer and getting their first job. These are all things that intrinsically motivate people, and they make a huge difference. So when I was looking, I found a little video I just wanted to share with you of some students who are sharing their hopes and dreams. And let me see if this video works. So this is from a university, Muslim university in India.
5 years from now is the vision, is the dream that I had 15 years back. I wanted to be an accomplished doctor.
In the next 5 years, I see myself as a successful surgeon and a writer.
After 5 years, I would like to see myself as a magistrate.
I would like to see me far more established than I am right now.
My aim is just to be a young professor.
I expect that after 5 years, I'll be a professor.
In the next 5 years, I would see myself as a footballer.
And I want to establish my own travel agency.
I want to work being a part of Islamic banking.
Be a very good teacher as well as researcher.
In the next coming years, I look forward to doing MS in USA or Germany.
I am very energetic about athletics and all, and I myself am a sports person. So after 5 years from now, I would like to see myself as a sports person or at least a sports journalist.
I want to see myself as a better journalist.
I have been playing basketball for the past 11 years. I have immense passion for basketball and few other sports.
I want to pursue the PhD in automotive field.
Doing a good cooperative job.
And I want to join Indian Air Force.
Because I want to be a social activist. I would look forward to working in a corporate world.
I look forward to being an IAS officer.
Inshallah, I will be a big scientist in the future.
So when I was watching that, I was actually quite inspired myself, because sometimes when a student joins a university degree or any sort of long makes a big commitment in education, it's sometimes easy to forget why you were doing that in the first place. Both from a student's perspective, maybe you came in wanting to be an engineer, and then halfway through the degree you realized actually you wanted to be a scientist or a designer or a lawyer or a business person. But also as an educator, when you're designing experiences for your students, it's not so much about the content itself, but more about the passion and what motivates the student and how you design an experience that really taps into that for them. But one of the things that I think about with this next generation of online learning, and what really is a huge opportunity for everyone, is that these people in this video and all of us here today have had some tremendous opportunities in our lives. And not everyone has that opportunity. And that's a big challenge around the world today, because there are many students who dreaming about being an engineer or a scientist or a designer or an entrepreneur, that dream is as far away as being a president or an astronaut or a famous singer. And that's a real challenge for all of us, but it's something that I feel that we can address with the way that we design learning experiences and with the model in which we deliver education as well. It's both a huge opportunity, but it's also quite daunting. So, to put it in perspective, what percentage of the world do you think holds a university degree? Does anyone have any thought around what it might be? You might know, what the percentage of people in Malaysia who might hold a degree? You think 20% in Malaysia or around the world? Around the world? So we have 20%. Anyone else have a guess or an idea of how many people hold a degree? 10%? 10, 20%? Any lower or higher guesses? Okay, maybe you have them, but I just can't hear you because I'm so far away. Okay, well, the reality is that only 6.7% of the world holds a university degree of some sort. And that means that over 93% of the world actually does not have an opportunity or the ability to get a higher education. And that locks them out of many of these opportunities, many of the hopes and dreams that they may have had. And the further, the older they get, the further away it can seem sometimes. But this is a big challenge because the OECD even suggests that for a country or an economy to achieve a really sustainable and robust growth rate, it needs to have at least 40% of the population receiving a higher education. And in many places around the world, we haven't achieved that. So this is just a chart we've put together based off of publicly available data. And you'll see that many countries around the world are below this 45% threshold. Malaysia is getting very close. And as part of the, I believe, the Higher Education Blueprint of 2025 and the Vision for 2020, Malaysia will achieve that. But many countries are very far behind. And particularly when you add up all of this together, there's at least 500 million people who are missing out on a higher education, and many more than that who would like to get one, but for many reasons they can't. But I think this is something that we can address. But there are a number of challenges, a number of reasons why this occurs. One is actually distance. So this is actually a school in outback Australia. Australia is a very large country. I guess that could be a company as well in some ways. But it's a very large country. It's very spread out. Sydney and Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, these are cities that have most of the population, and they're just on the little bits of the coast. But if you look at Australia as a whole, it has, it's partly the size of continental Europe, sometimes the size of sort of domestic US. But it's very spread out, and there are many schools like this around the outback in Australia and in other parts of the country, where you have a few students, one teacher, very few resources. And it's a huge challenge, even in a country as wealthy as Australia, to actually reach all of these students and provide them with a good learning experience. And one of the big challenges you have, obviously, is that when you only have a school that small, you can't provide all of the courses that you'd want. You can't provide the interaction with other students you want. When you go to a large school in a larger city, you may interact with hundreds or thousands of people. You may be able to take, programming and science and mathematics and design and fashion and law and all of these great subjects, but in a school like this, you have one teacher, and that teacher has to teach everything. So it's a huge challenge. On top of that, we have, for those who aren't in the country but happen to be in a city or a university, sometimes we have challenges with boredom. Students come into a university, they don't show up to class, they fall asleep in the lectures, and I must admit, I'm someone who's fallen asleep in many lectures when I went to university. But sometimes I went to the lectures just to sleep, in fact. I was up late doing work, and I thought the lecture would be a nice, quiet place to sleep. But it's not good practice, but it also speaks to the style of education that the students are receiving, where they feel that, for whatever reason, the learning experience isn't relevant to them. It's not engaging them. They're not learning anything. So whether they're awake or asleep actually makes no difference to what they learn at the end of the day. And that's a big challenge. In Australia, lectures in a large sense are optional. They're not compulsory. There's no attendance marked. So lecture attendance is usually around 20 or 30%. In some courses, far lower. So you could, as a lecturer, you could be there and talking to nobody, except a couple, students who show up. And I've been to lectures like that many times. In other areas, another challenge is really the cost. And although in some cases we don't, as students or as parents, we don't pay that cost directly, there are definitely costs involved in educating students. Now this is just the price of tuition across a number of countries. And you can see Mexico seems to be an outlier. About 176% of their median wage is the cost of a university education. But Japan, US, Australia, England, Canada, it's all very, very expensive to get educated. But the cost of education is increasing significantly, much faster than inflation or CPI. And whether it's a public university or a private university, costs have been going up significantly. And this is just cutting more and more people out of the system. whether it's paid for by the public or the government or an individual, the cost is spread in some way, whether it's reduction in social services, whether it's paid for out of pocket or with some sort of loan with a high interest rate. There are many reasons why this would occur. The other reason people are missing out is because they're just busy. Many people have life commitments or family commitments. When they're young, they may have been in a situation where they had to work to provide for their family, and because of that, they couldn't attend school, and therefore they couldn't get a high school diploma or certificate, and they couldn't get into a university. So many things happen in people's lives, and you never know what's going on in a student's life or in an individual's life, but that does make a huge impact, has a huge impact on whether they're able to learn, motivated to learn, and whether they can actually attend and show up to school. So I guess when looking at all of this, we have to think about creating an education system, or adapting the education system so that it works for the needs of everyone. I think no longer will we be able to say that only a third of the population or only 7% of the population deserve or should have access to an education. I think all of these issues now are solvable. They're very challenging. They require a lot of work, but we're getting to the point where technology is there. So from a student's perspective, what do they really expect when they come in? Well, we've actually, we speak to a lot of students. I feel personally that I'm out of touch with many students now. It's been over about 7 years since I graduated, but we did go to university and asked a few of them. So let's see.
It's nice when you learn something and you find out how it's relevant to something that you do or see every day.
Okay, this concept applies here. This is what I'm going to do with it.
How you can apply it in your life, and then it's more memorable that way.
I have to be interested in whatever I'm doing. The second I get bored, it's gone.
But learning how it's relevant to the real world.
If you're interested in what you do and you're passionate and everything like that, then it's amazing. It's great fun. But if you're not, and if you can tell that the people around you are not, no, it's not. Interactively.
Group learning, definitely. Team class projects, and instead of giving us the answers, I know I'm being hypocritical. There are times when I do want the answers to the exams, but in some cases it's good to just give us a problem and let us figure it out.
Talking to someone else, not necessarily a lecturer, but like someone else in my course about what's going on.
Social person, I like talking a lot.
We get to explore and experiment with the whole activity process.
Lots of things have changed nowadays with online platforms.
Getting quick responses and ideas.
Sharing knowledge and learning experiences can be easily achieved. Moreover, I can connect with people who share the same interests with me.
Get connected with each other and have fun while doing their work.
Not just sitting there and trying to figure it out on my own.
To be active, rather than being passive.
Provide a lot of supportive feedback as well, and may have some sort of direction as well, instead of giving us a solution. So in that way, we become critical thinkers and be able to adapt to different situations.
If they just read off the slide, it's boring and you don't really get anything out of it.
If I can engage and actively involve with the subject that I learned, that will generate more interest.
Okay, so those were university students that we interviewed both in Australia and in Malaysia, and the responses are archetypical of many students in the world. And I guess it speaks to a new generation of students where they are looking for more. They've experienced many things. They've been able to both join online courses from around the world, but also they have exposure to a whole network of information. They've met many more people from many countries. So the students are really looking for experiences that are more activity-based, that are more student-centered, that integrate the physical world and the virtual world. And in many cases, for a student today, that there is no difference between the two, although we often think of there being one. But for them, they're both the same. But if we're able to do these things, then we're going to end up with a student populace which are more empowered, which they develop higher order thinking skills, where they collaborate, where they work together, where they're innovative, where they challenge things, where they're more curious. And in some ways, it's getting back to what those students wanted when they first joined the university or when they first joined school. They had an idea in their mind of what they wanted to achieve. And the education system needs to be geared around helping them achieve that. So the ways in which we achieve this is we hope to support educators in moving learning experiences from a teacher-centered view of the world to a student-centered view. When teacher is at the center, they're the expert. They have all the knowledge, and the students are desperately trying to get that knowledge from them. But it's very hard to do that. And these days, students know that they can find information anywhere they want. So spending many years just trying to absorb and memorize as much information as possible doesn't feel relevant to the student. It doesn't make sense. They know that when they go out into the real world, when they try and do things on their own, or when they work in a company or do a job, they'll have access to all the information they could ever need. There's no reason for them to try and memorize it. What they don't have, what they need to work out, is how to come up with new ideas, how to think differently, how to challenge concepts, and how to articulate new ideas to the people they're working with, to convince them. Those are things that they need to do, and they can only get that when they're working with other students. So one of the ways that we try and support this at Open Learning is by enabling a learning framework, which you can kind of look at as Bloom's taxonomy upside down in some ways. But most online learning, most traditional education had been focused on passive and corrective activities, things like watching a video or going to a lecture, doing a quiz or sitting the exam. But what's happening in many institutions is that the students have been filling the gap themselves when it's not provided by the teacher. When the teacher doesn't have activities, when they don't engage the students, when they don't have group work, the students will on their own try and fill that gap. They will form groups, study groups, to help each other out. They will come up with projects to try and solve themselves. They will do activities with each other. As a simple example, I remember even in year 12, when I was studying, there was a forum where, and this was well over 12 or 15 years ago, and the students would actually take turns posting mathematics problems for other students to solve. So it became a challenge. Who could create a math equation or a math problem that someone else couldn't solve? And then they'd work together to try and solve them. So these are things that students are doing on their own outside of the system. But now when students are attending a university, when they're joining an online course, they're expecting to get these experiences. And when you move online, you have to put even more thought and effort into it to make sure that these experiences, these opportunities exist for students. Because what happens automatically in person, face-to-face, does not happen automatically online. It has to be curated, it has to be seeded, it has to be motivated. So all of this is necessary for the students. Now, the way in which this can be done, and this is just a list that, we won't go through all of them now, but, and we have this on our blog and on our website. These are just some examples of different activities that you can create where you're engaging the community. Now, these are just titles and the descriptions are elsewhere, but things like discover and share. So, as Prof. Amin was talking about yesterday, you're creating tasks and activities for the students to do. They could be finding the materials themselves. They could be sharing those with the community, reflecting on them, discussing them, and adapting them to their needs. You can do things like crowdsourcing. And there are many courses where students could come up with a problem and then students will try and work together and crowdsource a solution. You can have role-playing. You can have reciprocal teaching, where rather than you trying to teach every lesson, the students actually have to design their own lessons. And what that means is they will end up working harder to understand the topic so that they can really communicate it with the audience. But there's a whole set of these. And what this looks like when you go into a course is that the first thing you do is you're building rapport amongst the students. The first 2 weeks of an online course, or the first week, or even the first 5 minutes a student gets in there, is really about setting the tone. It's really about connecting it with what the student wants, connecting it with their past experiences, finding out what they wanted to be when they were younger. All of these things are necessary to really engage and motivate students and help them be a part of the community.